Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. This is episode 7 of Appetite for Discussion. We have our guest tonight is Kevin Head and Beau Alexander. We're going to be discussing the Rolling Stones article with Eric Church and his comments about the NRA. We've had a lot of people reach out, or I've had a lot of people reach out to me and said this would be a good topic to discuss. So, but before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Hunk of Junk Hauling. Please reach out to Hunk of Junk Hauling for all your junk removal needs at 704-657-6778 and States Vegas Clothing Company. And you can find them online at
Facebook, Google. Just Google it. It'll show you the website.
All right, perfect. And for those of you who are new to the show, if you can name tonight's intro song artist and name of the song, you will win a free half sub of your choice to Sub Express. So thanks for tuning in.
Be sure to get that pasta salad too.
Sorry for the low production quality, but States Vegas Radio is on vacation, so we'll be back in the studio soon.
Well, I'm sailing, oh yeah.
You better be glad this isn't 15 years ago, Brandon. I'd be jumping around this thing with my tube sock on. Yeah. All right, so if I can name the title and artist of that song, free half sub of your choice to you. All right, so let's just dive right in. We've all kind of talked about it, and if you haven't had a chance to read the article, it's in Rolling Stone magazine. I do have a printout copy of it here, so we can try our best to quote factually from the article. And
wait, what article are you talking about? I haven't even read this thing yet.
You really not read it? Oh, okay, I was like, for the love of
pause the show. Pause the show.
Yeah.
Real quick, take a quick time out. So basically, it seems like Eric Church was riding around on his 2,000 acres out in Tennessee, in Nashville, or probably just outside of Nashville.
Just outside of Nashville, yeah.
And
I guess it's been like, I think it's an article actually, since like 2011 he purchased some, and he's purchased continually as pieces of land came available, and that's how he's ended up with his 2,000 acres.
And apparently, I think one of the things that jumped out to me about the article was he was looking at his ponds, and they were talking about, how much have you spent on these three huge ponds, and he kind of laughs about it and says, he hopes he hasn't spent 8 figures, which is $10 million on some fishing ponds.
Yeah.
I would say that's probably a collective of the land and everything, maybe.
Yeah.
I certainly hope so.
But then go on and see what else he says.
Yeah.
I make a lot of money.
Yeah, well, yeah.
When
he
they're
gets
talking
to
about
that point.
yeah,
he gets to that part about make a lot of money. So, but we'll just jump right on in. So basically, here in the article, they start chatting, and I'm going to quote factually from the article, and he just says he's a Second Amendment guy. It's in the Constitution. It's people's right, and he believes it's not. I don't believe it's negotiable, but nobody should have that many guns and that much ammunition, and we don't know about it. Now, a little backstory: Eric Church had performed in Las Vegas at the Route 91 Harvest Festival. I think on Friday night he was the headliner, and so obviously this hit close to home for him because he was just there a day or two earlier, and then this huge, unfortunate, tragic event happened. But I think what I want to do is kind of just take this by little short segments and us stop and discuss it. And he goes on to say nobody should have 21 AKs and 10,000 rounds of ammunition, and we don't know who they are. Something's got to be done so that person can't have an armory and pin down a Las Vegas SWAT team for 6 minutes. That's fucked up. So, again, we're here to discuss. There really isn't a right or wrong per se to what we're talking about or the discussion, but everyone should be able to have an open opinion about it and not judge one another or no longer be friends with one another because maybe you're on one side of the discussion or not. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, do you guys feel like no one should own 21 AKs and 10,000 rounds and I guess us being maybe the government or police not know about it?
Well, that's kind of what I was going. That's what I was wondering is what does he mean by that? You know what I mean? Like, what is he? You know, and that's what it doesn't. I don't think explain in there is it a? You know, is he talking about a registered gun owner, or is he talking about unregistered gun owner that owns a certain amount of AKs or a certain amount of whatever it may be, and 10,000 rounds of whatever ammunition?
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a massive difference in that. You know what I mean? You know,
I find it interesting that in that article he says I'm a Second Amendment guy. He says it 2 or 3 times in the article.
Right.
So it's like I think on one hand he's wanting people to know, you know, I'm not trying to offend everybody. I'm a Second Amendment guy. But here's what I believe. But what I didn't do, and I think would be interesting to do, is go back to other interviews before the Las Vegas shooting and see what his comments are. Because there's an interesting video from him at the Grand Ole Opry, and I don't know how many, I want to say it's 3 months after the shooting or whatever, and he's written a song, but he tells the story about the shooting, and one of the guys that got killed went to Vegas strictly for Eric Church.
Right.
And he talks about being out there Friday night, seeing all the fans, seeing the faces, and he said, I felt like I was almost used as bait, is how he words it. So then when he finds out about this on Sunday, and then he gets a letter from this lady that my husband was killed there, and we're supposed to see you at the Grand Ole Opry. Well, he wasn't going to perform, but that just dug deep. So he was like, there's 2 empty seats down here for them, and the only way I deal with pain, because he talks about, he said something broke in me that night.
Right.
And so he says, how I deal with pain is I write music. So I wrote this song, and the song's called Why Not Me, and he performs it. I would be interested to see how going through that, because I felt like it was very personal for him.
Right.
If that changed his views, or if it made him be more outspoken. Maybe he's always felt this way, but now he feels led to talk about it. I don't know. But that's when I read this article, that's what I started wondering about, was, has he always been this way and now he's just talking about it? Did that change how he thinks about it? Because any tragedies are going to affect people differently, and depending on what you've been through, I've been through, he's been through, everybody's going to have different opinions. But like you said, everybody's got to be able to come together and talk about it.
You know, I forgot about him performing at the Grand Ole Opry. I had seen it just shortly thereafter, but I forgot all about that. And now that we have our production manager, Kasey's here, can you Google and see when he performed that? And what was at the Grand Ole Opry, I think, right?
Yeah.
He's going to work on that.
It was like October 7th, but I'm going to say October 7th.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was looking up an article over some backlash from the article you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
There's some good stuff on that. Tell me again what you're looking for there.
If you'll go to YouTube and just type in Why Not Me, Eric Church, and I think it should bring it up like first thing it'll show you.
You know, and maybe he did feel a certain way, but now he's changed his mind on some things, and now he feels like he has a platform because he was, you know, maybe he feels like he was a target, not necessarily a target to be a victim, but he was what would you say, like a piece that was out there to lure people in,
like
right?
Bait.
He was bait.
Yeah.
Of course, if
Which
you're
I
going to use
find to
bait,
be a
he and
very-
Jason Aldean's.
Yeah, so that was October 4th.
October 4th.
October 4th.
Of 2007.
I find the term bait, though, him saying that when it wasn't his night, it wasn't, you know, it was 2 days later that this happened.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I like to do, I find it very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Egocentric,
Like egotistical
narcissistic.
or something. Yeah.
Narcissistical for sure, you know, and it's just to say that he's bait for somebody else to draw people in, which, I mean, yes, he is a big crowd drawer, but there's however many other artists that were there for that weekend.
Right.
I mean, he wasn't the sole reason that
I think
thousands of people were
I
there.
think Jason Aldean was maybe that
He was the guy-
Sunday, right?
He was playing.
He was playing that night.
Okay.
Yeah. He was on stage when it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and not to take away from his stardom and, you know, and respect for him, but, you know, to just throw that out there just seems a bit over the top to me as well.
Right.
But, and also you're talking about how he feels and how he has maybe changed or what he used to be and where he is now. And I feel like there's an undertone in this article about his kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's got kids now, so and I think that's kind of spun his vision a little bit, if
Right.
you will. But it would definitely be, like you said, that's a good point, of going back and reading the past articles and reading those interviews and reading all that stuff. I mean, hell, we're talking 10 to 15 years of material here
Right.
prior to this, before
Yeah.
this all happened,
And
to see where his his mentality was at that point. Where it is now.
Which part of it is also growing up. I mean, that's the other thing. These stars that we watch, I mean, we watch them grow up and mature. I mean,
It's the
wasn't
good
that
and
long
bad of it,
ago?
isn't it?
Wasn't that long ago we could go to Coyote Joe's to a not sold out crowd and see Eric Church.
or see him at Legends in Boone with your college buddies. I mean,
Either or.
yeah, I mean,
I saw Lee Bryce there one time.
But to get back to this, I mean, and I'll go ahead and throw my own opinion out there. When it says no one should have 21 AKs and 10,000 rounds of ammunition, I'll just say that it is their right to have it if they want, and if we're going to put a number on it of how many AKs can you own, what's the number, or the rounds of ammunition, and who sets that number?
does he say AKs or AR-15?
He says 21 AKs.
AKs. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just feel like it's a slippery slope once you start putting numbers on things,
I do.
and especially when we have an environment that uses the term AR inaccurately.
Right.
Yeah. So I think we have to be very careful when we have people who maybe aren't responsible gun owners, have never fired a gun, making rules about guns. So I think we have to be very careful. Of course, it's a very sensitive and it's an emotional topic, and everybody wants to, sometimes lead with emotion. Sometimes you got to be careful. You got to be careful what you wish for, in a way.
But he does kind of, with that Second Amendment comment, he's stating that obviously he supports your right.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it is a slippery slope. I mean, you're talking, you start talking about numbers like that, it's a different story.
Right.
But he's not pinpointing what or who at that point. He's just throwing a number out at that point. And I think that's a lot of what people are taking and throwing it into a whole nother story. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's just like us three sitting at this table right now having a discussion. That's what we're doing. He's doing the same thing to
Right.
somebody else. And it's just a number that popped into his head. He's not thinking twice about it. And, his Second Amendment belief is a right, and that's what it is. It's a right to own. But like you said, I mean, who's got that right to say how many rightfully guns do you own?
Can't own. So I threw this question out there to some of my subscribers on YouTube, and if I didn't say it earlier, to answer the trivia question, just reply to my YouTube channel comments, and we'll get you your gift certificate. But some people reached. They have some. They text me because they were very passionate about it, and I'm going to read one of them to you because it talks about him and the Constitution and Second Amendment. And this person said, the Second Amendment is an amendment. You don't stand for it, then alter it to fit, quote, your view. To me, that's like saying I'm a Christian, but I don't believe in this part. Or athletes should have consequences for their actions, but maybe not my best player. That type of thing. You either have the right to bear or you don't. You can't say, yeah, I think you can have a gun and ammo, but not this much ammo. Prime example. A friend of mine believes the government should give me clearance to buy 5,000 rounds of ammo before an election. Said I'd have to fill out forms, and within a week I could get approval. I have a concealed carry permit and have never had an issue with the law, but now, quote, this amount of ammo should raise a red flag to people. What's the next guy's amount? Is it 1,000 rounds or maybe 100 rounds? I treat ammo like gold. You buy low and you sell high, or you just hoard it. Prices and availability have crazy swings due to political and social events. Mm-hmm. I believe I will listen to his music, watch movies, watch the NFL because it's things I love. Things that are entertaining. Sadly, most entertainers aren't in touch with the real world, and therefore their views hardly align with mine. For example, I love Steph Curry. He's amazing, great guy, Just wish, as a, quote, Christian, he'd speak out and say, I might not like or agree with Trump. We'll get into that maybe another episode. But I was taught to respect and pray for our leaders, blah, 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 blah. Back down there at church. I believe Church will still sell a bunch of records. I believe he's still unbelievable, and I love that he's a North Carolina boy. But I think he will lose a fair share of followers. Since day one, he's been against Hollywood, being untrue, sticking to his roots. I highly doubt anyone in Granite Falls is willing to agree with his comments. It's not Gunn's fault. It never is. These killing rampages are mental issues.
All right, so I'll start with this. A couple points about what you just said. So I was looking today.
Comments I read.
Comments you read. Yeah.
Right.
So today I was looking at the different people that have spoken out against Eric Church. I went to just some random, like, Eric Church live at Red Rocks, whatever video it was, and I would just scroll through comments, and it's like, I mean, one after the other. See you, Eric Church. Never listen to you again.
Right.
You hate NRA. I hate you. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it is a lot of backlash. So to go back to the article and what he said, like, I applaud him that I'm sure everything he said he took into heavy consideration of what might happen.
I mean, maybe not.
Maybe he was just having a conversation like we are and didn't think about it, but I think people in his position have enough people around them that they're checking things before they get out in public, in the media.
But doesn't he end this article by stating that he doesn't give a shit about what...
It seems like he does. It seems like he does.
I'm pretty sure it states in the ass end of this article.
Yes, actually, it says right here in the ass end of it. Church knows he'll get blowback from some fans for this, quote, I don't care. And we want to get into this later. Right is right and wrong is wrong. I don't understand why we have to fear a group like the NRA, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
We'll get into that in a minute. But what I like about how he ended this article, and it's really true to the basis of this show, is I enjoyed this, talking about the interview and having this discussion. I feel like these things need to be discussed. That's the problem with this country. We don't talk to each other enough. We dig in, we don't listen, and we don't talk.
And so...
Show's over. That's why we're here.
So, and that's what I was saying. Like, I think it's cool of him, you know, regardless of if people agree with him or not. I think it's cool that somebody in his position, because, I mean, he's arguably the biggest country star right now.
He's arguably, yeah. I mean,
absolutely.
He's definitely the top 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I mean, for him to come out and say this and know the type of blowback that's going to come, but he still felt like he should say it.
It doesn't matter how he words it, how he feels, how it is. There's always going to be blowback. It doesn't matter. He could have went way left on this. And completely. Or went way right. And
in part of my preparation, the first time I read this, I actually stopped and I realized also the source of Rolling Stone magazine and some of the things that they've done in their past that, you know, they've not done their journalistic due diligence.
Right.
However, when I was reading this, I kind of stopped and I thought to myself, this guy was setting him up. And the reason I think that is because knowing Rolling Stones and where they sit, which is more left of center or maybe further left of center. However, if Eric Church would have went on maybe a more right of center talk or whatever, Rolling Stones would have, I don't think, written as favorable of article about him, and it would have turned him into, yep, he's this crazy Jack Daniels country music singing, gun-toting outlaw that
Ted Nugent. He's
they would paint him into Uncle Ted, okay? Which I love Uncle Ted. But if he now goes a little bit left of center and says the things he says, I mean, they paint him out to be the biggest badass that's ever drank Diet Coke on planet Earth. Which, Eric, you know, I'm a huge fan, and it's because of you I married my wife, so I love and hate you. Yeah, I love you. But so Diet Coke and Coke Zero.
Before, you don't like Diet Coke and Coke Zero?
I mean, I do, but I'm not going to go out there and, you know, pretend to whoop people's asses holding my Diet Coke. Hold my Diet Coke, Beau.
Well, it's got
about to dot 2 eyes in here.
It's got Jack Daniels in it.
Jack Daniels.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
and it's probably like this much Diet Coke. I mean,
It's a splash.
all right.
Right.
So,
But at any rate,
so
you get where I'm going with it.
I do.
Okay?
Before I forget,
This is a judgment-free zone.
before I forget, going back to a point that I was going to talk about, wasn't sure how deep to go into it, but because of my profession, I'm big in the mental health side of this argument. So, and that was brought up in that comment.
Yeah.
You know, I wish more energy would be put into figuring out how to tie the mental health system more into these discussions and figuring out solutions. As much energy is put into, let's figure out this loophole, let's do, you know, I mean, it's always the same arguments, but nobody talks about the people that are committing these mass shootings, the medications they're on, the help they didn't get, the calls that weren't made. So, you know, when you start talking about all this, like I'm Second Amendment, I agree with things on both sides, but the one thing I always stress is the mental health side of things.
Right.
So I wish more energy would be spent having those discussions.
But who's keeping them out?
I don't know. I mean, I would say big pharma is a big part of it.
You know, I mean, something like this happens. You were talking about this. I mean, might as well talk about the Vegas shooting, right?
Yeah.
If you know, who's to state where the mental health side comes into play and what doesn't? You know,
So,
I mean, do you see what I'm saying?
I
though?
do.
It's like
I do.
it's where does this all come together,
Right.
and where's the division at, and who's stating what and what? You know what I mean?
Right. Like who?
So it's interesting because I think to elaborate on what you're saying, I feel like the mental health issue is an important issue, but I feel like it's a slippery slope because who gets to decide? And the example that I like to use when people say, well, you know, we got to do a better mental health screen. Okay. Well, let's say that I had a tragic event happen. Let's say that my parents were killed in an automobile accident. You know, maybe they were hit by a drunk driver from this article who was drinking Diet Coke and Jack Daniels, driving himself to the hospital, considering, 40,000 people a year die in automobile accidents. So let's say that happened. I'm young. It's a tragic event, and I have to go see a therapist. Rightfully so, normal. And maybe I'm putting on some anti-anxiety or an antidepressant medication for a while. But now I have come to the other side of it, and I feel better. I go take a gun safety course, and maybe I want to go buy a handgun. But I've seen a therapist, and I've been on an antidepressant. Does that mean I can't buy a firearm?
Well, I think it needs to be. I think some other screenings need to be put in place. I'm not saying that somebody, when they're a teenager, saw a therapist, was diagnosed with, whatever they were diagnosed with, can't ever own a gun. But I think that person needs to be marked as, let's do some other screening.
But you see what I'm saying?
I do.
feel like it's a slippery slope.
It is a slippery slope. But the other part of that is because of HIPAA and all this other stuff, a lot of all that stuff goes unreported. So nobody would even know that you had a therapist at that point.
That was going to be my next point is, all right, you're 15, you go through something, you got to be tragic in your life. You have to see a therapist for the next 5 years. You come out on the other side like you're talking about. Okay, you're, quote unquote, you're healed, you're better, you're mentally,
Stable.
normal, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
And I hate using that normal word, but,
Yeah.
all right, so now you're 20 years old. Now you get to 25. You've had 5 great years. You want to take a gun safety course. You want to get your concealed carry permit. You want to go do this. You want to go do that. Where does all this lay in the matter of, now you're 10 years later? Is there record of this? And where does that sit for somebody to see whenever you go to get your permit, or you go to, the sheriff's department to get your, permit to purchase a gun? Where does that line get drawn, and where?
Right.
But also, who's keeping track of all that?
No.
Well,
You see what I'm saying?
I do.
There's so much that's being left behind that we're talking about a mental health issue or whatever it may be, but nobody's. Everybody can point fingers, but nobody's saying, all right, well, let's stop for a second.
Yeah.
Let's go back and look at what this person has done in the past, or that. But also, why does that person need to be treated different than said person that may not have a history?
Sure.
Because they might just be an undiagnosed, untreated individual.
Right. Do you guys remember a few years ago? Not to cut you off, but comes back to your. I think the point that you're making is I want to say back in like 2008, 9, and 10. And I think I'm right. And if anybody listening in can always add in the comments if I'm wrong, because I've been known to be wrong most of the time. But
you also have somebody that can Google.
And I can Google, right. Kasey, can you Google this? I want to say there was either a part of the Affordable Health Care Act that they wanted to add into the, like if you're going to the emergency department, your name, your vital signs, do you want a firearm? And there was some pushback, like, what does that have to do with me having a heart attack or a broken leg or a sore tooth or a headache?
Right.
So it was interesting, and I don't believe it was ever added. But that was some controversy of, whoa. What does that have to do with what's going on here?
Right.
So, but you're right. Let's say that box is there and it exists, and that box is checked. Where does that information go? Who's monitoring that information?
Well, and as of now, nobody is. I mean, nobody.
Apparently not. Right.
Because it's not something that. There's no law that I'm aware of that says that any of that has to be reported. I mean, when they do background checks and all that for the registered, documented gun sellers at gun shows, if it's been reported and noted, then it would come up in a background check if they've broken a law, if they're a felon. I don't know that mental health history is actually on that, unless it's multiple hospitalizations and things like that.
Right.
But being 15, your parents died and you were
maybe
in
not even 15.
You know what I'm saying?
Maybe you're a guy who your wife died,
Yeah.
or your kid died,
That's
or you
what
got
I'm
a
saying.
divorce, or whatever the case may be.
That's where, when I just start thinking about all this, like, I think that's why it's such a big discussion, because I don't know that there's anybody that has the right answer.
Right.
I don't know that there's a fix for it.
But
I just know that people yelling at everybody, I'm going to take your guns, no you can't. That's not doing anything.
That's not doing anything.
No.
But in reality, though, that's kind of what they want, right?
Well, it is.
Right.
Exactly.
They want
but
this.
what does that accomplish, really?
Nothing, and I think that's the point.
Well,
right.
In my mind, I've always said this, and, we've all had talks, and, I'm a conspiracy theorist guy, but we're not going to get into all that. But
someday, hopefully.
But I've always said that as long as people are divided, they can't fight against anything bigger.
Of course.
So I think that's the point. I mean, I think it's as long as you can keep people fighting each other.
Of course.
All of us up here on this top level can do whatever we want to do.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, the funny thing is when a lot of these... I'm not going to get into that. Well, I will. When a lot of these events happen, if you actually will go and look at what bills were passed around that time, what was being lobbied for, there's a lot of big stuff that's happening while the news is focusing on a shooting. I mean,
right.
Every time.
And I do think it's a fair point to say that none of these mass shootings to date have ever happened from an actual NRA member. I do think that's an important fact, because as we move forward in this article, Eric just below here says there are some things we can't stop, like the disgruntled kid who takes his dad's shotgun and walks into a high school. But we could have stopped the guy in Vegas. As for why nothing was done, I blame the lobbyists, and the biggest in the gun world is the NRA. Then he goes on to say, I'm a Second Amendment guy, again. But I feel like they've been a bit of a roadblock. I don't care who you are, you shouldn't have that kind of power over elected officials. To me, it's cut and dried. The gun show loophole would not exist if not for the NRA. So at this point in time, if I was an NRA member, and I truly feel this is what really got in people's crawl, if I was an NRA member, I would think I had more of a problem than the solution. I would question myself real hard about what I wanted to be in the next 3, 4, or 5 years. And I think it's important again to go back and say, in all these mass shootings that have happened, not a single one of them have been committed by an NRA member. So I'm not saying that he doesn't have a point. You can feel free to chime in if you want.
So I don't know if this is what you were referring to. There's an interesting article from Forbes. They're talking about the NRA and the hand they had when the Affordable Care Act was written. So it says there's a gun lobby section, Title 10. It's called the Protection of Second Amendment Gun Rights, and it contains 5 different provisions, mostly dedicated to shutting down conversation about guns and medicine. So it goes on to say, wellness and prevention programs may not require the disclosure or collection of information related to the presence or storage of a lawfully possessed firearm. Next provision states we can't collect data relating to owning or using firearms. Provision 3 states we can't use or maintain records of individual ownership or possession of firearm ammunition. And then Provision 4 limits the ability to determine rates or eligibility for health insurance based on gun ownership. And the author of this is just saying that that's an odd provision to even have in there.
So I wonder if the provision was written just because, or was it in there because there was discussion about? Because I was always under the impression that that was something they were wanting. Because you got to remember, Nancy Pelosi said in order to understand what's in the bill, we have to pass it first.
Right.
The 2,700-page document. So was there something in there that maybe the NRA knew about? I mean, there are huge lobbyist groups, so they knew that was in there, and that's why they had these provisions. I don't know.
Could be.
Thanks for fact-checking that, though. Good job. But, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, when you were talking about the mass shoot, well, finish your thought.
Well, what I was saying here is, yes, there's a problem, and I just don't see, I don't know what all, and maybe you guys can tell me, outside of the NRA protecting our Second Amendment rights, which is the right to bear arms against our own government, right? So that's the whole point of it, right? So they can't
supposedly, yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. So why is it that they are made into the big bad bear? It would be like saying, I'm a pill company, but no one from the pill company has, no one who takes our pills die. But all non-members of the pill company seem to overdose. Right. So is it the pill company's fault? Yeah. Or I just don't, and maybe that was a really horrible example, but I just don't, it's like, yeah, I get that people don't like guns, some people, and I get that some of them are scary, but there's over 300 million guns on the street. How do you go get them all?
You don't.
You don't.
You can't.
You can't. So let's say that you did go take them. Let's say that you took them from all the people who had them legally, and let's just play the scenario.
And that's the problem. Those are registered gun
So
owners.
let's say you took them. Let's say that was 150 million. So now, who has the other 150 million? The bad guys. I mean, yeah, but
here's the thing though. I mean, anybody can say whatever they want. I mean, I'm not gonna say yay or nay either.
Right.
But I mean, I know personally a lot of people that if they came to take our guns,
right,
there are a lot of us that they wouldn't have all of our guns. I mean, and we're just talking,
of course,
and we're just talking in this little small area here.
You know, someone brought up a very good point to me the other day when someone, and again, this is just for discussion, and we can argue both sides and be fine. But someone brought up a good point to me the other day when they say, well, why are you worried about the government to come and get guns when they have bigger guns and tanks than you do? But when you rewind the clock 200 years, shouldn't we have the same guns and tanks that the government has so they don't take over the people? That was the argument that I heard. And I was like, well, damn, that's a really good point that I
It's a fair point.
didn't think about. Not saying that I need a tank.
But
who doesn't? I mean, really, come on.
But if we could have
if I had a tank, I would have driven it tonight.
Yeah.
But so here's the
We could
thing.
have parked them in the front lawn.
That's right.
But here's the thing: when
You can only have 2 tanks, though. Right.
But
Government
this is the
says
thing,
2 tank limit.
when you start getting into these discussions,
Yeah.
typically there's going to be somebody that says exactly what you just said about the guns. They have bigger guns than us. Somebody's going to say that.
Right.
Somebody's going to say we got to get rid of the loophole at the gun shows.
Yep.
Somebody's going to say it's the same narrative, whichever side you're on, and it's just spit over and over and over and over, and people don't actually read and gather their own ideas and come up with their own thoughts about it.
Right.
So that's another issue.
But they do read. They read everybody else's opinion on social media,
And
which
they're-
is the problem.
And they're reading the people that side with them or whatever side they think
They
they're
like
on.
their
And then if somebody
opinion.
says something different, it could be 100% fact. Well, they don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
I don't believe that. And that's the issue.
Speaking
It's
of,
very easy to look at something and say, you know what, I like the way that sounds right there.
Yeah.
oh, absolutely,
And I believe it 100%.
And that's what I'm going to talk about, and that's what we're going to do, and that's the way I'm going to live my life.
I'm gonna dig through all this and find what I like.
So, let me
Yeah.
ask you this. So, you were talking about when you brought up that no mass shooter has been a member of the NRA.
Yeah.
So, and we're talking about guns and numbers and all that stuff. So, going back to arguments that always come up, I mean, what do you guys think about when people say all of these mass shootings happen at gun-free zones? So they're like, so you have people, so you're saying the answer is we need to fight guns with more guns? We need to what? So that's always an argument that comes up. The shootings always happen at gun-free zones.
What a good discussion topic. So to me,
thank you.
I mean, honestly, put a check. It's like shooting fish in a barrel, right? I mean, if you're
That's
a guy,
pretty piss poor term.
it is a pretty piss poor term. Sorry.
That is terrible.
Can we rewind?
No,
or
we
something?
can't. All right, let's say that you're a guy and you're like, hey, I want to go hook up with some chicks. I'm going to go to an all-chick party. Chances are they're pretty good that you're going to have an opportunity to meet a nice lady. So, but you're not going to go to a dude party.
True.
Right. So, there's a reason that these happen at gun-free zones because they know no one's there to shoot back. Now, is the answer to armed teachers? I don't know. I don't know what the right answer
Well, an
is.
armed teacher wouldn't have fixed the Las Vegas shooting.
No, they wouldn't have. Nor would have metal detectors fixed the Las Vegas shooting because the shooter was up at the Mandalay Bay, 32 stories up.
If
So-
you believe in the one shooter theory, yes.
If you even the one shooter theory, or if you believe that a bump stock really did that, but we'll get to that in a minute because this isn't. He mentions that in the article. But to go back to no, I don't think it's a coincidence that that's where it happens. I don't think that. Here's a great example. How many mass shootings have happened at a gun show?
None that I'm aware of.
Right, and why would you think that is? If you just had to just throw a crazy,
Because everybody has a gun.
probably everyone has a gun.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that would be my guess.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the answer is how to stop those shootings at the gun-free zones. I would like to think the teachers shouldn't have to take guns to school.
Well, and for the teacher thing, I mean, I think every teacher carrying a handgun is a horrible idea. But I do think that there should be a percentage of teachers at schools that are carrying weapons.
Do you think it should be a voluntary thing? Like they should offer, like, hey, look, teachers, if you want to go take your concealed carry class,
I think that's a good
it's
idea.
totally up to you.
I think that's a
But
good
we,
idea.
as a school institution or school system, we're going to do our best to have a resource officer at every school, and maybe there's in the budget, maybe there's not. Maybe they can find money in the budget to put an ex-military person along with a resource officer
Or a
at the school.
veteran.
Well, yeah, like
Or,
a vet or
something.
right? So I think there are some solutions out there, but
I just think it would slow people down. Let's say you're gonna go plan a shooting at a school,
right,
and well, nobody has guns there, so this ought to be a walk in the park.
of course.
If you think, well, there might be 7 or 8 teachers there with guns, I mean, maybe it at least slows it down,
Maybe.
or something,
Right. Maybe they think twice about it.
Yeah, because
and they don't
maybe,
want to, it deters them.
and maybe that second thought is all they needed, because a lot of this stuff is impulsive too. I mean, it's planned out, but
Right.
it's not thought out.
That's a good point. But a lot of these things too,
To an extent. I mean, you don't know. We really don't know what is going on when somebody that is
That's true.
decided to, take this
Right.
Sure.
event on. Like I keep going back to the Vegas shooting because of this, but the Vegas shooting, right? I mean, that guy supposedly, loaded all his stuff in to his room or rooms over a course of many days.
6 days, yeah, I think.
It wasn't. I mean, that's not impulse at all.
No,
There's not. You don't make an impulse decision in 6 days.
That's true.
You make
Right.
an impulse decision in 30 seconds.
Right.
correct.
Not scientifically, but
Right. 31 is no longer impulse.
but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
You don't really know what the mental,
Right.
what's going on in the brain there. You know what I mean? And when you start, you're talking about deterring people and things like that. Yes, I mean, fight fire with fire. I mean, are you throwing gas on the fire at that point? Are you really truly trying to deter what they're doing? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't really have that answer, and I don't really, without all these other checkpoints of who is mentally stable and who's not, and all this other stuff of people having guns and all this, who's really able to be in that position?
That's a good point.
Or who's able to make that decision of that? I mean, I don't. There's so many different bits and pieces and so many little dissections here that
right.
Well,
it's because it's not an easy solution.
It's very broad stroke. It's not detailed at all. Nobody's digging into this.
No, it's not. It's a very convoluted thing. It's not simple. It's not just a simple one answer, and this is how it's going to be.
It's not. But what's blatantly obvious is what's going on now is not working.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So I mean,
right
for sure.
So that's the thing. I mean,
and all right, goes right to his statement here. If you're the NRA, and you want to keep the image that you have and the power that you have, why not start trying to take a look at this whole big picture here? And not in a bad way, not a way of getting rid of your guns, and not a way of this, that, or the other. In a way of the safety of all people, so us that are hunters and gun owners that love to go and shoot because that's what we enjoy doing can continue to do this without feeling the pressure of somebody else's fuck up.
Right. Well, that's just it. It seems like in every other case when something bad happens, it seems like the media says, well, that's just a lone wolf, or you can't have just a few bad ones that define a group. Someone gets shot with a gun, the NRA has to be taken down. They need to do this. They need to be something else.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, too, when you asked about why is the NRA the bad guy or whatever. People have to point at something.
Yeah.
And people that are just following social media or reading Twitter, I mean, they have to blame somebody. So it's, well, the NRA's the gun people. So
right.
And I think that's what it boils down to.
I was going to read another message from one of our avid subscribers and listeners. It says, how can Eric Church think the NRA is a roadblock towards safety in America? In many rights, the NRA seems to guard against the government heading towards socialism or communism. Those two words scare the shit out of me, just saying. Does he even understand the meaning of the Second Amendment? He speaks to the fact that we shouldn't have this kind of firepower. Certain gun, I'm assuming. I'm sure our forefathers had the knowledge or common sense to foresee advanced technologies when they wrote the Second Amendment. I have more, but I'll come back later. However, this is not true essence of the Second Amendment. I think Eric Church should have done a little more research to educate himself before just spouting off at the mouth. He began a, quote, gun and Second Amendment guy. I'm going to leave the rest of that out because it's not going to be helpful to the conversation. So, but that kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about, against our own government.
Well, so here comes another line everybody uses.
Yeah. When
this Second Amendment was written, they weren't talking about people with machine guns.
No.
I mean,
they're talking about
muskets.
And, you putting your gunpowder in
right,
yourself.
Right.
So, that's going to, any discussion you have, somebody's going to say that.
Right.
So,
but
how true is that?
But at the time, the government had muskets too. So we were going musket for musket.
Now that's true,
right?
I hadn't thought about that.
That's right.
But you know what I'm saying? Like that's.
But since the government now has tanks,
yeah, so we should all have tanks.
Yes.
I mean, it's only fair.
They got helicopters. We don't have a regular helicopter laying around here, do we?
But I mean,
yeah.
So
I'll take a mini tank.
So let's seriously go back to the article and if y'all are comfortable with it, let's seriously. I mean, what do you think about? Should somebody have, let's say, 10? Let's say AR-15s because that's the common.
Honest, it doesn't matter the number.
But that's the common gun everybody says, AR-15. So
AR-15 or AKs. It's
So I mean, should somebody be able to have as many as they want with as much ammunition as they want without somebody knowing about it.
Yes.
I don't know who that somebody is.
I will just jump out there for the argument's sake, and I will say yes, because how can you apply putting a limit on me for what I have the constitutional right to own? Then why does someone who is not a skilled professional driver own a Ferrari that goes 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds? Because we already know, statistically speaking, more people die in an automobile accident than they do by guns anyway.
True.
So I feel like if you go to that extent to put a number on things and a cap on things, then I'm a guy who's a fair guy. Then we got to apply it to everything.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I do agree with that.
So
this is what I start thinking about, though. So when people bring up this so-called loophole that they discuss.
Yeah.
So let's say...
Explain the loophole.
So when most people talk about the loophole, they say that anybody can go into a gun show and buy a semi-automatic weapon with mags and ammunition. And they say that it's a loophole because it's at a gun show and they don't have to follow the same guidelines, which is true to some extent because there are gun dealers there that are not registered gun dealers. They're more of a collector. So whatever guns they have, it would be like me selling you a gun and just doing a bill of sale, writing it down, and it's that simple. But where the breakdown is these people shouldn't have these type weapons. You know, if they're a collector...
Again, these people.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying, these
Who are
collectors.
these
I'm saying these collectors
But I was-
shouldn't have these weapons. They should have the older weapons that aren't these... I don't want to name guns because I hate
Right.
how they keep naming the same
Right,
guns.
yeah.
right.
But it's not really a loophole. Like, Joe Schmo with a felony can't walk into a gun show and buy an AR-15.
But see, I was under the impression to even sell guns at a gun show, you had to be a licensed firearm licensed
I don't think that's...
Can you Google that?
Say that again.
To sell guns at a gun show, you have to have a certain license, which means you've had to go through
You do, and those people have to do background checks
on you.
if you're buying it. But I do think that someone can be labeled a collector and not be a registered gun dealer, and would not have to do a background check.
But could they sell them at the gun event because they're a registered collector?
So
Yes.
this is Wikipedia, so take that for what it's worth. But any person may sell a firearm to unlicensed. This is talking about gun shows. Federal law requires background check for commercial gun sales, but an exemption exists for private party sales, whereby any person may sell a firearm to an unlicensed resident of the state where he resides, as long as he does not know or have reasonable cause to believe the person is prohibited from receiving or possessing firearms under federal law. So
does that mean? Does that mean if?
It's just your assumption that this dude
Does that mean if?
stand-up guy.
or lady is.
Well, that's right. It's kind of like a bartender cutting somebody off when they're drunk.
Right.
It's the same thing. I mean, does that mean if I buy a gun from you, I commit a crime with it or do whatever with it, that they can come after you again?
Technically, well, they're going to come talk to you because it's probably going to be registered.
Not
to
only
him.
that, it says they are private party sellers are not required to perform background checks on buyers, record the sale, ask for identification, whether at a gun show or other venue.
But that's a private party. That would be me and you at a gun show.
It is.
And I walk outside though, and I'm just there looking for a
Right.
gun. I see you carrying a
We're in the trunk.
911,
And
and I
trunk.
love it. And I'm like, hey, I'm a good guy. You're a good guy. Let me buy your gun.
You seem like a stand-up guy.
Yeah. We're
me
both
get
guys.
that-
We're
let me
both
get that
carrying.
from you.
Right. Why not? How's that extra mag? You don't need that. I need that. Right. But again, I'm pretty sure because we watched the same video about the NRA and Eric Church, that lady.
Oh, yeah,
And she mentioned, like, you cannot sell a gun at a gun show unless you have this license.
So, in the gun show.
In the gun show, yeah.
Not in the parking lot.
Not in the parking lot. But, I mean, literally, I could walk out there now and you could sell me a firearm. And it would be legal.
So then if I'm understanding all that correctly, the loophole only exists outside the gun show.
Correct.
So
If
there is
I'm-
no loophole. I mean,
At the gun show.
At the gun show.
If we're understanding it correctly, and listeners, you can please
And that's what I've
comment.
always thought.
So I guess the question is, do all gun shows require you to have a license
to
Yes.
sell
To
firearms in
or
the
do they
gun
allow
show.
private parties to come in and set up shop?
I don't think so.
I think I'm not sure about that. I think
don't
you have to be
think
a
so.
registered gun dealer to be in the gun
Like,
show
you have to
selling.
have
To
a
register for a
specific-
booth or some sort
Right.
of scenario.
Right.
with
And
that.
they have to, by law, do a background check.
Yeah, which I don't know how that works. Do you have like a Wi-Fi password where you can like log in and like
They
you
share
get
it with
that
each
right?
other.
Do you pay me and
You
then
bring
I
your
come see
background check
later?
with you. Yeah.
That's right.
No, I'm sure they have their computer set up and
Credit
go on
this
the.
off in the parking lot.
Yeah,
There's a guy
that's right.
outside selling fake
They go
backgrounds.
Like
Facebook said you were fine.
well, like at my job when I have to do background checks on people. It's just a site you go to, type it in, it takes 5 seconds.
Okay, so the gun show's probably equipped
Something
with
like
the
that.
technology to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
So I feel like, are we all on the same page that, and again, tell us if we're wrong, because we could be, but if you go inside the gun show, you cannot sell a gun as a
private party with
right,
no background
right.
check.
I can't just walk in there and buy a gun from you because you just happen to pay the $50 and have a booth.
Yeah, I don't.
You have to be licensed and
That is my assumption. That,
right. But now, if me and you go in the parking lot,
It's a whole other story. It's the
Right.
same, I mean, to be quite honest, I've purchased a gun in the parking lot before. I mean,
I've
from somebody else.
I have
you
too.
know.
you do realize now you're on the list.
I have too.
There's a bill of sale. There's a whole 9 yards. I know the
Right.
guys that did
But
as well.
well, so
10 years ago, anyway.
So let's say you're at the parking lot of this gun show.
Yep.
And going back to what you said, I would think that if I was selling a gun to somebody, I would think that I would be looking at them thinking, trying to figure out, should I do this, should I not? Because I do think in the end it would make me responsible.
I mean, you would think so.
But going back to what you said earlier, who's to know? I mean, you could be the nicest guy in the world while we're sitting there talking and then take it and go rob an Arby's or
right. I
something.
mean,
I don't
nobody got in the car with Jeffrey Dahmer and, Ted Bundy and thought, definitely going to kill me.
Right.
He's a
yeah,
bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is going to break
It's going to be a
stuff.
hell of a ride, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I go back and forth about the quantities and who has what, and I go back and forth. Because I'm like you. I think fair
I'm
is
with
fair.
Brandon. I'm a fair guy.
I am
Like,
too.
If you're going to have this in place, it should be fair
Across
the
the
board,
board.
100%.
I agree.
Right.
There shouldn't be oh, well, you don't look, you shaved your head last night, like I can't say you did.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But-
like,
And you
But
have
so-
tattoos.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
it brings up the question. I mean, why does somebody need all that?
why does somebody need all that? Why not?
I think that's the answer, because they can.
I mean, at this point, it is. It's
Because
because
they have their
can.
I'm not saying I want it all.
Right.
Right.
And it's to me anyway, the way I view it, it's surely a want, because I have yet, tell us if we're wrong, figure out a reason why I need 10,000 rounds of
Right.
said ammo
Right.
for any particular
let me ask
thing
you
at
this.
this point. But
Why does someone need a private citizen 2,000 acres?
because they don't want anybody to come on their property or anywhere near their house.
Because they're famous. And people hate them now because of an article.
If
NRA.
but you see what I'm saying, though?
do.
It's like, well,
Why this? Why that?
Why is 200 acres not sufficient, Mr. Church? Why do you need 2,000?
Well, and that's just one of his properties. Too.
Right, I'm
Yeah.
sure there's others. Well, they mentioned the article, the one in North
He's got
Carolina.
North Carolina.
Yeah.
He owns like a mountaintop somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I mean, because you can, because it's America. And
But
And I can.
is there a difference in? And I'm just throwing questions out.
Of course.
Feel
Is
free.
there a difference in a guy that is a avid gun collector and wants to collect all the rifles from different wars, different machine guns? Because we would have to Google this too, because I'm not going to say that I know this for a fact. But there's a certain year that you can own a machine gun if it's made before a certain year, and after that they're illegal. Don't know what the year is.
like you don't have to register it or anything like that.
Right. So
Okay. I don't know.
is there a difference in that guy that's collecting guns because he's a historian or wants this, wants that, and he has 500 guns?
Until he kills someone.
Maybe. But is there a
Then
difference
it's a
between him and a guy that just likes to go shoot and likes, to have all these different weapons and ammunition and maybe fears the end of the world or something? I mean, you never know. But
Right.
is there a difference who distinguishes it, and is that where it comes back into you can't distinguish? So
I don't think you can distinguish. I don't think you can.
The same damage can be caused by that gun. That's an 1874 model.
right,
Yeah.
That's a 2018 model.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I mean, it's the same damage can be done. It's just a matter of how you look at it, which is where the whole thing
Yeah.
is coming into play here. If I own 10,000, rifles from the Civil War, what's the difference in 10,000 of those versus 10,000 of 2018 model,
right,
1911?
Right.
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Yes, there is a physical difference,
right.
but
They both do the
where do
same thing.
where do you differentiate?
Right. But here's
You
the
know.
deal: if somebody wants to go, I mean, we got to be careful because before too long, if we start getting out there in left field like banning shit, we're gonna have to ban pressure cookers, right? Because you can set up a pressure cooker at the damn stadium.
At Boston Marathon,
Right.
Wasn't that pressure
And
cooker?
That was
bombs
2
or something?
pressure cooker bombs. Right. So if people want to do
And
harm,
those Instapots are pretty badass.
got one in the kitchen.
I do too.
Yeah. Have you those air fryer? Have you had an air fryer?
I haven't tried that yet. I heard good things though.
Yeah, we got that too.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
I wish you'd have cooked us up
I
something.
know.
like
Right? Where's that damn thing at, brother?
Our catering production assistant is upstairs asleep.
that. Or watching
Watching
Kardashians.
Kardashians.
So I've got, or watching Kardashian. So I have one other thing here to read from a listener. It says, Eric Church is an entertainer that I enjoy no matter his political belief. His political beliefs have not affected his product in a way that doesn't make it enjoyable. If political belief systems were what I was going to judge entertainers, I would be watching an empty TV screen and nothing on the airways. I honestly feel if I was asked a similar question after the death of my brother, I would probably give a similar answer to Eric Church. I also do not see anything wrong with the government and the people knowing who would be buying that many rounds of ammo at one time. Keep making good music, and I'll be glad to be a member of the choir.
The church choir.
That's right.
That's right.
And I'm a member. He kind of touched on what we've already talked about, too.
We did, and I was going to kind of ask that anyway. Like, when did celebrities and these people become spokesmen for everybody anyway?
When the Kardashians got their own damn TV show.
I think that's it too.
Well,
I swear I do.
I mean, maybe not, but what was it? Maybe really...
He must watch it. Okay.
Athletes,
That's his
I
favorite.
can't stand them. They are the fall of society.
But do you know what I'm saying? Like,
And they, by the way, just my own personal opinion, they do more harm to women than they do good.
the Kardashians?
Yes,
Oh,
with body image.
Yeah.
I mean, are you friggin' kidding me? What they do to themselves?
whole nother show.
That's a whole nother topic, right? However, I want to say, what was it in the Olympics? Maybe was it? Remember in the 70s when the track and field guys put up their hands? Wasn't it like the first athletic protest
Yes.
that sparked debate?
Uh-huh.
And it could have been, even Jesse Owens when they competed in Germany. What was it possible that maybe Hitler, was that during Hitler's time? Somebody didn't come out because I think he was an African American athlete and they weren't going to be around it. I could totally be making that
No,
up.
there is something like that.
But there's something.
Yeah,
there's something about
like
that. So there's that controversy, but I think it was maybe with the track team.
But this is my thing. So when you get into all these discussions, you start with the Second Amendment and somebody ends up talking about the First Amendment.
Right.
Well, it's my right to say this, my right to say that. My question is, if you feel you have a right to say whatever you want to say, why do you care what Eric Church says about anything? He has the same right you do.
That's
Why
right.
do you care if somebody's not standing for the American flag? They have the same right you do. Who cares?
Right.
Ask them the last time they asked, are they like somebody to tell them what to do?
Yeah, and that's
You know?
going back to the fair's fair thing.
Right.
I will let anybody say anything they want to say, do anything they want to do, until they try to not let somebody do what they want to do. And that's when I get very aggravated.
Right.
Very aggravated. And I
100%.
don't like people spreading lies and trying to push narratives either. But that's another show. But you know what I'm saying? Like, in all
Got like 10 or
seriousness.
15 more shows after
Yeah.
this.
Oh, we got a bunch.
I'll be here all night.
We're gonna do a 1 hour Chelsea Handler show.
Oh,
Oh Lord.
don't get me started.
Lord.
he gets so tore up about her.
But like being serious, like if First Amendment is so important,
Yep.
and everybody, it's my right to say what I want to say, freedom of speech, then let everybody else do the same thing and live their lives and move on. I don't understand.
That's one of the biggest things with me is why do you care what I'm doing?
Right.
Why do you care?
As long as
We
if you're
can
not
have our
bothering me, you know
right,
what I mean.
Exactly.
Well, I think for us it's one thing, but if you have a platform and you're doing something that sparks attention, and then it gets national attention, and then people start taking things to a different level,
It puts it on a grander stage.
a grander stage. But it also helps divide.
It does. But how can you have people that are in support of the athletes not standing, or one of them speaking out against Trump or whatever,
Right.
but then you turn around and say, well, Trump shouldn't be tweeting about, whatever. The president shouldn't be tweeting. Let's throw that out there. But he has the right to say whatever he wants to say.
He has the right to say whatever he wants to say. That's
and yeah,
right.
he's the president and should think more, but everybody has their right.
Right. He can say what he wants to, and no one can twist those tweeter words. They sure can. I think the one thing about the anthem, and maybe you can Google this too, Kasey, is I think, if I remember correctly, what I didn't like what he said, and I think this is the sentence that gets left out when people talk about the anthem in the protest, is something to the effect of, in his original statement, was he couldn't stand for a flag that had a history of oppressing people of color or whatever it was he said. So it wasn't just, I'm going to do a protest because of social injustice. It was, the flag represents history of what's happened to African Americans.
Yeah.
So he couldn't stand for a flag that represented that. If I remember the actual quote.
I think that is, but my whole thing with that is, it started off as a silent protest.
It did, right.
The media...
So I'm not going to stand up. This was back in 2016 when he said this.
Can you
Golly,
speak
that
up?
was
Can you speak up just a
2006.
little
Sorry
bit?
about that. It says, I'm not going to stand up and show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color. Kaepernick told NFL media in an exclusive interview after the game. To me, this is bigger than football, and it would be selfish on my part to look the other way. There are bodies in the street, people getting paid, leaving, getting away with murder. So, yeah, he did make the statement.
Right.
So the thing is, though, he knelt down over, I think the first time he did it, he was like back behind the bench or something, right?
Right.
So it was a silent protest. The media saw it, showed it, asked about it. Well, of course, when you're approached about it,
Yeah.
you're going to take that stand and that stage. Well, this is what I'm doing. Don't know what he thought. I would assume that he never imagined it would have turned into what it turned into.
I don't think so, but
it would have never been that way had everybody just said, cool, he's over there doing that, I'm over here standing, let's play football.
Right.
We're here to play football.
I don't know if you guys heard, there's an interesting kind of dynamic beside that with the Cowboys quarterback, Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
Came out recently and basically took the other side of that and said, hey, I don't believe that the national anthem's a time for me to kneel. Football's always been a place that has brought people together for me, and it's just, I don't think it's the right time. And he caught backlash for it too.
I'm sure.
But I just think there's an interesting dynamic there of how much flack he caught versus Kaepernick.
Right.
I don't know if you have any opinions on what he said versus.
I haven't even.
I saw a blurb on it today, and what was it he basically said again?
That's basically what he said. He took the other stance that he didn't feel like that was the time and place to kneel.
Right.
And he caught a lot of flack from the left or
Yeah. Okay.
whatever that side is, and it's just interesting to me that they want to give Kaepernick all this space to do his thing and respect that, but when Dak Prescott comes out on the other side, well, now he's kind of getting crucified for it.
Of course.
When really both of them should probably be able to have their say.
They should have a discussion, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just you've got each one of them have a right to do what they want to do.
And
it may not be the medium that they need to do it or whatever in some people's eyes, because that's what it's coming down to. Some people are saying that you're doing it at the wrong place, or you're doing, whatever, and that's what people are catching flack about. But each one of them have a right to do what they need to do.
Do you guys remember? I think this brings up great debate. The people who were so upset about the players not having the right to take a knee. Would you say it's fair to say that those same people who are upset about they can do what they want to do, express themselves, whatever, would you think it's fair to say those are the same people who were upset about Tim Tebow's doing Tebow, the prayer, sitting down, doing this? There was so much backlash about him doing that, right? Mm-hmm. Why?
Because it offended people.
That's it.
It offended people.
That's asinine. To quote Eric Church, that's asinine.
Well, and we kind of got off topic because it turned into megastars and athletes and all, and what they think, and why does it affect so many people, and why does it make everybody so mad? But I mean, I don't know. I just don't know.
It's
I
a
don't
tough
know
one.
how far I even want
What
to go.
bothers me is that people going back to where the whole side thing came from, but what bothers me is people take this so literally every day. They take the Kardashians, they take Eric Church, they take whoever it may be, Mike Tyson,
Chelsea Handler,
right?
he has such
No,
a
really,
deep-seated.
you don't like her?
Oh man, follow him on Twitter. I love it.
So
sorry.
That's great.
But they take them so literally instead of just looking in the mirror,
Right.
You know what I mean? Like let's look at each other first before we start worrying about what Eric Church is doing. He's living on 2,000 acres.
Yeah.
He doesn't give a shit
No.
about what anybody else thinks,
No.
or what he doesn't want them coming on their property. He doesn't even want to talk to you. He wants to sit on the couch and throw a lure out his back door and
Bounce
do
it
his
off his
pond.
deck.
That's exactly what he said.
I know.
Right? Yeah.
And
And he's got money to do it.
That's
So just
right.
let him do it. Who
and
cares?
And and that's what like Kaepernick or whatever. So every day, people on Facebook that live in the same city, might even be neighbors, are arguing on Facebook about, well, he should be able to stand, blah, 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 blah. Well, at the end of the day, he goes home to his gated community and his mansion and just lives his life, while the people that are neighbors that are actually affected by each other are arguing.
We're changing poopy diapers.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
putting up leftovers. I mean, just doing whatever
Right.
our normal life is after we've worked our ass off all day.
All day.
But people are arguing about other people, but those people don't affect their daily life.
No,
Eric Church don't. Yeah, he's
The
from
only
Granite
way- the
Falls.
only way
But he don't hang out in Granite Falls.
The only way he affects my life is if it comes on the radio.
Yeah.
And that's it. And you know what? That affects my life because I'm usually singing or I'm dancing.
Right.
Or,
That's
you know,
right.
I'm going, that's a hell of a song.
Yeah, it's a good song.
You know?
Good song.
And that's it.
Yeah, because that's what
You know?
that's what his job is.
Right.
That's what he's here for.
He's an entertainer.
Exactly.
He
He
gets
is.
paid to entertain, just like we get paid to do whatever shit job we got. You know? It's,
To afford to go see him in concert.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just, that's it. That's it in a nutshell right there. Why are we taking that so literally? You know?
I think we hold our entertainers and superstars, athletes, I think we honestly hold them to a higher, I don't want to say a higher standard, but we put them up on a pedestal that they really shouldn't be on. And it's only because they're on TV and they make a shit ton of money. But guess what? They put their shoes on the same way we do. They pull their pants up the same way we do. And if they ate Sheikies, they get the shits too. So they're just regular
Show
people.
sponsored by Shiki.
I will still eat you though.
But just like we're sitting here talking, just because he's super famous, he also has the right to just talk.
Yeah, he can say what he wants.
And
right.
and now people's mad as hell. I'm not buying his album. I'm not going to do this.
But see, here's the deal. He's going to sit on that 2,000 acres, and he probably says a lot worse shit than that.
Oh,
But there ain't a damn person listening.
No, that's right.
That's right.
Isn't that the beauty of it?
Nobody's broadcasting anything. That's the thing, is there's a medium called Rolling Stone magazine that has now taken what he said and threw it out to the masses.
to us regular folk.
Right. That you know, whether they twisted it, whether they put an undertone to it, whether they put an overtone to it, whatever you call it, you know, all that stuff plays into effect by this. Again, take it with a grain of salt. Why are we taking this so literally?
I think it's just the...
if we focus on each other and focus on ourselves and trying to better ourselves, we wouldn't be worried about the NRA. No, would we?
Right.
No.
We wouldn't be worried about, you know, what he's got to say. Because, I mean, how many people are stressed out because Eric Church said that, you know, the NRA should take a look at themselves in the mirror?
If you read social media,
Right.
a damn bunch of them.
That's my point.
A lot.
Right.
That it doesn't affect their everyday
Right.
life.
And I think that goes
You know?
back to what one of the listeners had written in, regardless of someone, and I feel the same way, regardless of, if I disagreed with every actor and singer, anybody that entertains, I mean, I wouldn't have any fun. I wouldn't enjoy. And if I didn't talk to people who I didn't agree with all the time politically or socially or whatever, I mean, what a miserable damn life.
Yeah.
You know? It's okay because I can learn something from you or you. We may not agree,
Of course.
right? But I can learn something. Maybe you open my eyes to a different angle to the topic that I haven't seen before.
Right.
So, and I think that's the point.
That's the massive point of this whole thing. I mean, you know, we all can sit here, and I guarantee that the three of us sitting right here are going to have a difference of opinion somewhere along the way. And, you know, but we're all friends. We have been for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Why does an article that's on the mass media have to divide? It goes back to what you were saying. It has to divide you from the rest of somebody else because somebody just mentions the NRA or somebody just mentions that they want, you know, just throw their fucking lure out the back door into their pond. You know, like, stop being so literal with this stuff.
Well, and I think where this all started, we started with the whole gun debate and gun talk, and talking about what can be done, blah blah blah. What you just said about people worrying about themselves and the people around them and taking care of each other and respecting each other, I think that's where it starts, because that person who might be thinking about doing something or whatever, I mean, maybe all it took was somebody just sit down and talking. You know what I mean? And he says it in here, people dig in and don't talk or
we
whatever.
dig in, we don't listen, and we don't talk.
And I think that's a huge issue, that people care so much about what Eric Church says instead of what their neighbor's doing, or, you know, helping them take their trash
Or their
out,
father.
or whatever,
You know, your brother,
yeah.
sister.
I think that's the problem. People are so in a world where we have everything at our fingertips. I feel like people are so much more private or to themselves and don't actually know what's going on.
Isolated.
Yeah, they're more isolated.
In a way.
Yeah.
But you do it to yourself. And I mean, us three have done it. We've all three got our phones sitting here. We're wearing Apple Watches, whatever it may be. But that's all part of it, you know. But if you sit, and everybody has access, like you said, to the fingertips, but it isolates you because you're doing this the whole time.
Right.
You're not worried about, you're not having a conversation. You're not, you know, discussing. You're not talking to people. You're not talking through things. Maybe you had an issue with somebody. Just talk it through.
Yeah.
You know, something like that, instead of just, you know, passive aggressively texting them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, it comes down to that.
I think it does too.
You know, and go back to that 1874 rifle. You know, to the core of what family used to be and what people used to do.
Well, guys, I've got one last question. If you were going to stop listening to Eric Church, raise your hand. Exactly. That's the point. Hell of a singer. Appreciate the shit out of you.
Yeah.
We're not going to stop listening. To each his own. Everyone has their own right to say what they want, think what they want, believe what they want, but have a discussion about it.
Be you.
And learn something from one another.
And talk to people.
All right, fellas. That's a wrap.
Yeah, thank you.
You got it.
Thanks for having us.
Technical difficulty. Not sponsored.
You gonna get your Coke Zero to go with it?
No.